the description box. Now, the Vende tribe. The Vende tribe can be found in South Africa. They are descendants of Central Africa. Now, legend has it that they are descendants of Africans who were escaping the bounty hunters to sell to the European slavery. Now, if you're familiar with the Atlantic slave trade was coming from the west, getting people from the west coast of Africa. Now, as the Africans were catching wind that people were getting kidnapped and sent off and not coming back, they started to move towards inland Africa. But then the bounty hunters started moving towards inland Africa to start getting people. So the Vende tribe are a set of people who went from the west coast to the central Africa to come down south to escape the bounty hunters from slavery. They have a dance called the Dumbo. This is the most famous dance amongst the Vende tribe, and it is done annually at their most sacred sites, which is Lake Fendutsi. It is to secure good rains for the following season for the crop and for the tribal chief to choose a wife from the bunch. The young girls, this is the final stage of the initiation process for the young girls. What they do is they stand in a single file line and they connect arms and they move like a snake. And much like the ace in the Greek lines, whatever moves the ace make while they're tight, the line has to follow. The same here, whatever moves the first girl in line makes, everybody else has to follow. Traditionally, the dancers wear aprons, little aprons covering their fronts and their backs with tassels ornaments called taho, and they are bare-chested to show their availability. Like in some nomadic tribes, and I'm assuming this one also, if the women walk around bare-chested, it means that they're available, that they're not married. And I have an example here from a South African musical called Umoja, where they're performing the Dumbo. For members of the NPHC organizations to brand themselves with letters or other symbols of their respective organizations. This is the process of burning one's skin to purposely scar or keloid. I had the fortune of talking to members of these organizations who chose to get branded. And the reason that they chose to get branded was to show that they've been through the rite of passage to become a member of their organization and to show their appreciation for their organization. Now, the way this is done is a regular clothes wire hanger is folded into whatever shape or letter of the organization. They rested her on a stove, on a stovepipe till it burns, and then they simply tap it for a few seconds on the skin. And then over time, you know, the mark will heal up and kilo it up. Now, here are some examples. Sigma branded, and Omega branded, and a member of Zeta Phi Beta, their brand. Now, branding have received some negative views from individuals because the earliest form of branding in the African American community started with the Atlantic slave trade. African Americans and Africans were branded by their slave masters and slave trading companies to show what slave master, what slave trading company owned them. Also, after slave codes were passed, and in case you may not know what slave codes are, these were a set of laws that was passed in order to keep slaves in their place in early America. After slave codes were passed, there was codes in some states that required that if a slave was to run away and be caught, they would be branded an R on their hip, and every time they would run away, they would again be branded. This was to show that if this person was to be bought, it was shown as a defective, saying like, this slave has a tendency to run away if he has 3 brands of R's on him. But as members of NPHC, Africans have always purposely scarred themselves to show their affiliation. This was done in tribal scarification. Scarification is an ancient African tribal body art that involves purposely scarring the skin to create raised marks and/or complete patterns. It is generally believed that scarring was developed because black people's skin wasn't ideal for tattooing. If you break the uppermost part of the skin, it'll fit, when it heals up, the scar tissue will fill up and it will come up and come out. Scarification is still a practice that is happening today in many African tribes, and it is given to individuals after completing their initiation into manhood or womanhood or becoming a tribal warrior, just how as individuals with the organizations do not get branded until they complete their initiation process to the organizations. It is more common among the tribal warriors to receive their scarifications, and it was more common so you would know what tribe they belong to. Again, for example, going back to the Greek letter organization, you see a man with an Omega letter brand on him, one that likely he belongs to Omega Psi Phi. Like the guy down here, bottom left, I don't know what tribe that comes from, excuse me, but everybody in his tribe has those same tribal scarifications. Scarification is done differently. You have some scars that are made with a Y-shaped blade, and you have others that's made with fish hooks by pulling up and slicing the skin. Once the wounds are inflicted, they will put ashes and dirt and mud into the cuts, so when it heals up, the keloids will come out broader. And here you have some people getting scarred up. Top left corner, you have a man getting his back done. He obviously just got his front done. You have a little baby getting scarification done on his face. And at the bottom, you have a woman getting a full body done, scarification done. And here are some finished products. Now, strolling versus party hopping. Now, I didn't know that there was a difference between strolling and hopping. I had the chance to sit down with members of these organizations. They explained to me the difference in between them. Now, first off, a party hop or a stroll is when these members engage in a traveling choreography to music. Hops or strolls are sometimes done in a single file line or some structured configuration for enhanced showmanship. For example, like you see the iotas up top are in a single file line and the deltas down below are in a formation. The same rules apply to hopping and strolling, like locking up and getting tight. While the choreography is in motion, no one should be able to penetrate the line or the formation, and all the members